Tonight on Newshour, the United States is pulling out of UNESCO once again. President Trump says the decision is about fairness and putting America first, but critics argue it's another clear sign of Washington stepping back from international cooperation with implications far beyond cultural diplomacy. So what's really behind the move and who fills the gap? Plus later, a headline causing deep shock across the political establishment. President Trump has accused a former president of treason. It's a word with serious legal weight, but is this a sign of real legal action or a deliberate shift in focus as challenges mount? First, let's take a look at this report from Nick Harper on the UNESCO story.
Another term in office, another chance to withdraw the US from UNESCO. Donald Trump, during his first term in the White House, decided to pull the US out of the UN's cultural organization. His successor, Joe Biden, rejoined the organization, only for Donald Trump to now announce it's time to pull the US out once again. We're told that this will take effect at the end of next year. The State Department's spokesperson, Tammy Bruce, put out the announcement saying continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. Remember, Donald Trump is all about America first, not about multilateralism, which is something that this UN organization very much represents. Tammy Bruce going on to say that the UNESCO organization has an outsized focus on a globalist ideological agenda for international development. She said quite clearly that was at odds with the US's America First foreign policy. The US does dislike international organizations under Donald Trump. He is not keen on that idea of working with other countries in a multilateral format. He has already withdrawn the United States out of the WHO, the World Health Organization, and also the UN's Human Rights Council. UNESCO has put out a statement saying, however regrettable, this announcement was anticipated. And UNESCO, it said, was prepared for it. They also say that the financial impact of the US decision will be limited. The US only funds the overall budget by about 8%. And we're told that UNESCO has already diversified in recent years, finding other financial sources. And remember, in the past, the US has accused the United Nations and UNESCO in particular of anti-Israel bias. UNESCO, for example, back in 2011, allowed Palestine to become a full member of UNESCO. Tammy Bruce from the State Department also citing that growing anti-Israel rhetoric within the organisation was part of this US decision to withdraw once again. Nick Harper for Anewz in Washington, D.C.
Let's bring in Ube Sharbanda now, our US correspondent. Ube, always great to have you here with us in the studio. Let's start with the basics then. Why are they leaving UNESCO? Why now? And what message does that send to the rest of the world, do you think?
Well, according to the official US State Department press release, that the US is leaving and ending its funding of UNESCO by next year because being part of this United Nations organization does not advance American national interests. That is a direct quote from the official State Department press release. And this is part of the Trump administration's broader America First world view. And what the State Department has done is that it has issued very direct guidelines that any participation by the United States in any international or multilateral group must, with clarity and conviction, advance American national security interests, as opposed to what the Trump administration refers to as a globalist agenda. One of the major problems that the Trump administration has with this particular UN body, which pretty much reflects the reason why the Trump administration in his first term withdrew from this group, is that it admitted with full membership the state of Palestine, which the United States does not recognize, and which, by the way, the United Nations does not recognize as a full member of the UN, as an officially recognized country. And that was viewed by the US as a direct contradiction to the U.S. alliance with Israel and with what the Trump administration says is American national security interests. And for me, what was so particularly interesting in that State Department press release was that the Trump administration officially laid out its opposition to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or what the UN calls SDGs, as pursuing globalist agenda that is in direct contradiction to American national interests.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But as you say, it's not the first time that America has walked away. What do you think is causing them more problems? Are they more concerned about the bias that they suggest, the problems with the ideological nature of some of the initiatives, or is it more about that structural area, about being bound by multilateral rules?
Well, I think it's a combination of the fact that the U.S. provides well over $100 million for UNESCO, and the U.S. is, I think, by far the largest contributor to the United Nations amongst major Western countries. And for the Trump administration, they've laid out guidelines that are very clear that if the American taxpayer is going to be contributing to any multilateral organization, particularly the United Nations, they must see some sort of gain from it. And for the Trump administration, it's both a combination of what they view as DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which the Trump administration has put a complete stop to in the U.S. domestic policy, as being still a major priority, a globalist priority for the United Nations. And on a more concrete policy front, active steps like admitting the state of Palestine as a full member, and what the Trump administration also views as a pro-China bias by this UN body, which again is a major contradiction to American national security interests, given the overall competition between the US and China on the global stage, but also this sends a political message by the Trump administration to other bodies in the UN that, hey, if you want any more US funding from the richest country on earth, well, your activities must be within the broader parameters of what the U.S. considers to be its national security interests. And that's going to have an impact.
I mean, you mentioned China there. Do you think China could now step in? Is it an opportunity for China, perhaps, to claim some soft power? Is there any sense in which the U.S. might be concerned about that?
I don't think the Trump administration is really concerned about losing soft power as with the UN as being a vehicle. China itself does not contribute as much as the U.S. overall to the United Nations. Certainly, this could be viewed by the Chinese as an opportunity, but the Chinese government also has a very realpolitik approach when it comes to multilateral organizations. And for Trump administration officials, they believe that Beijing itself would have withdrawn funding to UNESCO if the Chinese government viewed this international body as contradicting its own national security interests. So this is part of this new global order where the Trump administration has put all multilateral groups on notice that the United States is not going to participate in any globalist agenda-driven organizations. And we saw that with the Pentagon recently pulling its officers from participating in the Aspen International Security Conference.
Interesting. Ube, do stay with us. We're going to now go to another big story making waves in Washington. President Trump has publicly accused Barack Obama of treason. It's a word rarely heard from a sitting president, let alone aimed at a former one. So is this a serious claim or something else entirely? Let's take a look at the story.
It's there. He's guilty. This was treason.
U.S. President Donald Trump accused former President Barack Obama of treason on Tuesday. Without providing evidence, he said Obama led an effort to falsely tie him to Russia and undermine his 2016 presidential campaign.
They tried to steal the election. They tried to obfuscate the election. They did things that nobody's ever even imagined, even in other countries.
Trump was seizing on comments from his intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, last Friday. Gabbard said at the time she was releasing documents that showed a, quote, treasonous conspiracy in 2016 by top Obama administration officials to undermine Trump by manufacturing intelligence on Russia's interference in the election. That charge is contradicted by a CIA review published earlier this month, a 2018 bipartisan Senate report, and the documents that Gabbard herself declassified. Trump has recently been seeking to divert attention to other issues after coming under pressure from his conservative base to release more information about Jeffrey Epstein. The disgraced financier and sex offender died by suicide in 2019 while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. Backers of conspiracy theories about Epstein have urged Trump, who socialized with him during the 1990s and early 2000s, to release investigative files related to the case. Asked in the Oval Office about Epstein, Trump quickly pivoted into an attack on Obama.
The witch hunt that you should be talking about is they caught President Obama absolutely cold.
Trump suggested action would be taken against Obama and his former officials.
It's time to start, after what they did to me, and whether it's right or wrong, it's time to go after people. Obama's been caught directly.
While Trump has frequently attacked Obama by name, it's the furthest he's gone since returning to office in pointing the finger at his Democratic predecessor with allegations of criminal action. A spokesperson for Obama denounced Trump's claims, saying, quote, "These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction."
Ube, let's dissect this one too. Many people, I think, quite shocked by the phrasing, by the use of the T word. Just how unusual is it for a sitting president to accuse his predecessor of treason?
Well, let's not forget President Trump, immediately following his first-term election victory, publicly accused ex-president Barack Obama of spying on the Trump presidential campaign during the 2015 campaign going into 2016. This has long been on the mind of President Trump, who believes that President Obama directed John Brennan, the then Director for Central Intelligence, to put together what is called an intelligence community assessment that alleged that Russia, the Kremlin, wanted President Trump to win over Hillary Clinton, who was then his political opponent and had been part of the Obama administration. To such a degree that, according to the latest declassified intelligence that Tulsi Gabbard, President Trump's Director for National Intelligence, those declassified documents tell us that, according to the intelligence that John Brennan had back in 2016, that in fact, that highly classified assessment was directed by the orders of President Obama. But the specific intelligence was viewed to be as really untrustworthy and not of, quote, high caliber. Yet, John Brennan went ahead and published that intelligence community assessment and then leaked it to the Washington Post and the New York Times as a means to create a public picture that the Kremlin actually interfered in the election because they wanted President Trump to win over Obama's pick, which was Hillary Clinton. Now, this is part of a major scandal in Washington. It is extremely rare for extremely sensitive intelligence community assessments to be publicly declassified and then released. So essentially what the Director for National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is doing is releasing the details behind what then John Brennan published and then selectively leaked to corporate media in the US. Going back to your question, it is extremely rare for a sitting president to accuse a former president of treason. But President Trump, his reasoning is that he believes that Obama, from during the campaign from 2015 to 2016, was essentially pushing the intelligence community to create a public perception that would then impact the voters' preference in that election based on the belief that Russia, an American adversary, wanted Trump to allegedly win. And now with these new intelligence documents being declassified by Tulsi Gabbard, we're seeing a much fuller picture here. And President Trump is not one to forget past wrongs. And we could see potential Department of Justice investigations on former Obama administration officials that could then lead to potential prosecutions.
Yeah, not one to forget past forget past wrongs. But what do you think about the timing of this, Ube? Because President Trump has felt some pressure around the Epstein situation. Perhaps for the first time in his presidency, he's looked to be feeling some of that pressure. He's held this view about President Obama for some time. Can we be a little bit cynical, a bit suspicious about the timing of this dramatic accusation of treason?
Well, I'm always cynical. I've been in Washington, for over 20 years. Certainly, President Trump's base wants the Department of Justice and the FBI to do more to release, the so-called Epstein files. And we're seeing it on social media, a number of MAGA influencers, America First influencers, who support the president, telling the White House, hey, there's something there. We need to see the full list and the full investigation of Epstein. It is not case closed. That being said, Tulsi Gabbard has been long working as a matter of the administration priority on declassifying these documents that were classified by the Obama administration, given the view in the Trump administration that essentially this is a dangerous precedent. This was a dangerous precedent set by then President Barack Obama to weaponize the intelligence community in the hopes of affecting the outcome of a presidential election. And let's not forget the headlines that ran in the Washington Post, New York Times, and CNN. Russia prefers President Trump to win because then, the Kremlin will have a pliable administration over that of Hillary Clinton. There are many that still believe that to this day. And so this was a priority from day one since Tulsi Gabbard was confirmed as Director of National Intelligence for the Trump administration to look at all of these files, all of the intelligence documents, and all of the emails. Remember, the emails of the National Security Advisor and the Director for Central Intelligence are also highly classified to then reveal it to the public, and so that we can, for the first time, as the public, as the media, to view what pushed the Obama administration and John Brennan, who John Brennan, by the way, has been very outspokenly anti-Trump, what pushed the Central Intelligence Agency to essentially establish a view, an assessment, an intelligence community assessment. And remember, the intelligence community is about a dozen different intelligence agencies in the US to believe that the Russians had actively interfered in the American election. Now, what was interesting in some of those documents declassified by the DNI is that it was also pretty clear with those top secret emails by President Obama's National Security Council that they did not have a smoking gun. I mean, this goes back almost to George Bush's WMD intelligence assessment, that there was no smoking gun internally within the Obama administration, that the Russians had actively tried to change the outcome of the American presidential election. Yet, anonymous sources from the Obama administration had then leaked to specific columnists and reporters in the American corporate media that they, in fact, did have intelligence that the Russians had had an effect on the American national election on behalf of President Trump.
Okay, let's just look at the effect of these dramatic accusations then. So President Trump is no stranger to making these very strong, very public accusations, statements. When that happens, what do you think the primary effect is? Do you think it, as critics might suggest, it sort of denigrates the institution, the high office? Or do you think it more cements, motivates his core support? Or is it a bit of both?
I think if you had asked that question to President Trump, he would say, as we heard from his press conference, well, what was Jake Sullivan? What was John Brennan? What was Susan Rice doing by creating a false intelligence assessment that tried to influence the American media and the American public to believe that the Kremlin had a conspiracy to support and back President Trump as president over that of Hillary Clinton. So for President Trump, from his perspective, is, well, the other side the opposition used the office of the president and the office of the Central Intelligence Agency to go after me. Why should I not go after them.
Will this continue forever then? This tit for tat. Have we got any hope of an administration rising above it?
This Pandora's box has been opened. And we saw that with Jake Sullivan, Hillary Clinton's national security advisor and a key Obama security official, and with John Brennan. And it's cyclical. The Democrats are doing it to the Republicans are going to fire back. But this time, as President Trump is in power, the Republicans are in power, and he has a Attorney General, the Department of Justice, and the Director of National Intelligence who are firmly supporting him, firm Trump supporters. I think we could see some potential indictments of Obama administration officials. It is highly unlikely that a past president who has immunity will be indicted. But President Trump, remember, he believes that his impeachments and the New York State Attorney General attempts to put him in prison were also part of a broader Democratic political agenda to go after him. He has not forgotten. And now he has the full power of the office of the president, and that power includes declassifying past intelligence that President Trump and the Director of National Intelligence believe was weaponized in order to put President Trump's opponents in power and to put President Trump potentially behind bars. He is not happy about it.
Ube, whether you're outside the White House or here in the studio, it's always great to hear your analysis. Ube Shaban there for us there. Well, that is all for this edition of Newshour. From global exits to political escalations, then, the signals from Washington are loud and likely to grow louder still. From all of us here at Anewz, thanks for being with us.